Operation Sealion. It's one of World War II's greatest what-ifs, isn't it? We're talking about the planned German invasion of Great Britain in 1940, the one that never actually happened. Now, for decades, history has told us it would have been an absolute catastrophe for the Germans. But what if that whole story is missing the biggest piece of the puzzle? Let's dive into a scenario where Sealion might have actually worked.
And this is the big question, right? For as long as I can remember, the answer has been a firm, resounding no way. But a really compelling analysis by Rochelle Forrester completely challenges that assumption. It lays out a step-by-step scenario where the invasion, well, it might have just succeeded.
You've probably heard this phrase before, a Dunkirk in reverse. This was the classic description of what everyone thought was waiting for the German army. The idea was that the super-powerful Royal Navy would just swoop in, trap the invaders on the beaches, cut off all their supplies, and basically annihilate them. Just like the British Army had been trapped at Dunkirk.
And that really gets to the heart of the conventional wisdom. The German Navy, the Kriegsmarine, was it was tiny compared to the British fleet. It was no match at all. So, case closed, right? For decades, this was it. This was the accepted historical truth. The ultimate roadblock was always the Royal Navy.
So where did this certainty really come from? Well, a huge piece of the evidence comes from this famous war game that was held back in 1974 at the Royal Military Academy at Sandhurst. They basically got a bunch of top military minds together to simulate the invasion, to see exactly what would happen. And, well, the results seem to prove the point beyond any doubt.
Just look at these results. It's a simulated disaster. So, the war game shows the Germans managing to land their first wave, about 90,000 troops. But then, the Royal Navy shows up, and they sink almost 2/3 of the German supply barges. The result? Out of those 90,000 soldiers who landed, less than 16,000 would have ever made it back to France. We're talking about a complete and utter catastrophe.
The war game even broke down these devastating losses. It projected that 33,000 German soldiers would be forced to surrender, just stuck on British soil with no way out. Another 26,000 would be killed in the fighting, completely cut off and without any of the vital supplies they needed to keep going. And maybe the grimmest number of all, a staggering 15,000 men were projected to have just drowned in the English Channel as their barges and ships were sent to the bottom. So you look at numbers like that, and the case for a German failure seems absolutely airtight. The war game was taken as definitive proof. But, and this is a big but, what if the entire simulation was built on a flawed premise? This is the crucial turning point in this whole analysis. The entire war game, and frankly, the entire historical consensus was built on the idea that this was going to be a naval battle. But what if the decisive battle wasn't fought on the sea at all? What if it was fought in the skies above the sea? And this is the concept that changes everything: air superiority. It's a simple, brutal truth that World War II would prove again and again. Massive warships are incredibly vulnerable to sustained air attack. If you can control the air, you effectively control the sea right underneath it. This slide just lays it out perfectly. It's a tale of two competing theories. On the left, you've got the conventional view. The naval mismatch is everything. The Royal Navy wins, period. But on the right, you have this contrarian view, that naval power becomes almost irrelevant if the Luftwaffe can achieve total air superiority over the Channel and sink any ship that dares to sail into it. Okay, so if you're Germany, how do you actually pull this off? Well, this analysis lays out a very specific blueprint for victory, a way that air power could have paved the way for a successful invasion.
So here's the proposed game plan. Step 1 is the absolute key. You have to win the Battle of Britain. But not by bombing London. No, the goal is to systematically destroy the RAF's radar stations and their airfields. Once the RAF is crippled, you launch the invasion. And this part is genius. The invasion itself is the bait. It lures the Royal Navy south into a kill box in the Channel, where the Luftwaffe can just relentlessly pound it from the air. With the Navy gone, resupply becomes possible, and the German army can push inland.
Yeah, this is the million-dollar question, isn't it? The chain-home radar system was the RAF's secret weapon. It was their eyes and their ears. To have any hope of winning the air war, the Luftwaffe had to blind their opponent first. You see, with radar, the RAF fought with this incredible efficiency. It was like a superpower. They knew where the Germans were coming from, how many of them there were, and they could send up exactly the right number of fighters to the right place at the right time. No wasted fuel, no guesswork, just pure, deadly precision. Now, just look at the difference. Take away that radar superpower, and the RAF is forced to fly what are called standing patrols.
That means just a handful of fighters constantly in the air, just hoping to stumble upon an attack. It's wildly inefficient. The Germans, knowing this, could then mass their entire force to completely overwhelm the small number of British fighters on patrol at any given moment.
And this table really drives the whole point home. If the battle's being fought over the Channel to protect the Royal Navy, the RAF is at a massive disadvantage. Their fighters have a long way to fly from their bases north of London, which gives them very little time, what they call time on station, over the target. The Luftwaffe, on the other hand, they're flying from nearby French airfields. They can stay longer, they can attack in huge waves, and they can just swamp those dispersed British patrols.
So, what's the bottom line? Well, according to this analysis, the Royal Navy, the pride of Britain, the most powerful navy in the world, could only survive for 2 or 3 days under constant, overwhelming air attack in the narrow confines of the Channel. The German army on the ground, though, they could hold out for over 70 days, living off the land, just waiting for those supply lines to open up.
So, here's the crucial takeaway. The battle for the Channel wouldn't be some long, drawn-out naval campaign. It would be a short, brutal, bloody affair. The Royal Navy would either be sunk or forced to flee, leaving the English Channel wide open for the Germans to reinforce and resupply their beachhead at will.
This whole perspective really forces us to completely re-examine a battle that was never fought and to start questioning a historical narrative that has seemed pretty much unshakable for over 80 years.
Okay, so let's put all the pieces of the argument together one last time. The 1974 wargame was flawed because it focused on ships, not planes. The truly decisive factor would have been air power. By destroying the RAF's radar network, the Luftwaffe could have neutralized Britain's biggest advantage, leaving the Royal Navy completely exposed in the Channel. And without air cover, the fleet gets destroyed or has to retreat, opening the door for a successful invasion. Our source uses this really powerful phrase to describe the conventional wisdom. It suggests that our certainty of a British victory has maybe been more about national pride than a cold, hard, objective look at the military realities of 1940.
And that really leaves us with a final, pretty thought-provoking question, doesn't it? The story of Operation Sea Lion's inevitable failure is a cornerstone of Britain's finest hour. But is it possible that our attachment to these inspiring, comforting stories sometimes prevents us from seeing the past as it truly might have been?